I want to run like this one. I want to score like this one. I want to wear the same clothes as this one does. My jersey should hang out like this one. I want to wear socks up high, down low, boots.
When there's so much money and when there's so much media attention, you perhaps get to a stage where you start feeling like you're the ultimate.
It's not about the club anymore.
The sad truth, especially in cases like this that involve domestic violence or sexual abuse, a lot of times it's behind closed doors. You very likely will not hear too much about it, find out a lot about it unless, something's recorded.
A lot of these guys go scot-free. Nothing ever happens. We are slowly seeing action being taken.
This guy, I think, could potentially be looking at 10, 11 years in jail if he's convicted. And that is obviously the end of his career.
What is to be done? How do things change?
So all these people who are progressing to the grassroots levels, they have to be given education about what sort of fame you can expect, how to handle social media with the positive and negative aspect. Like if you're blowing up, your head should not blow up. And if you're going through a very dark phase, you need to maintain your sanity.
Hey everyone, welcome back to an all new episode of All About Sports, the podcast, a weekly sports podcast for the fans, by the fans. Joining me today are all my co-hosts. So we have Shubham Malu.
Hey guys.
Rishabh Krishnan.
Hey everyone.
And Aniket Gui.
What's up, boys?
Yeah, and I'm Mazhar, your host today. And last week, before we go into this week's episode, let me just tell you what we covered last week. So last week, we spoke with Olivia Eastwood, a former netball player who made the England development squad under 19s, has now transitioned into working in the sports industry and also studying her master's in sports business at one of the world's leading sports universities. So check out that episode. This week is slightly more serious. We've had a lot coming our way as sports fans to take in terms of some of the darkest things across, humanity altogether. Domestic violence. Mason Greenwood has been accused of sexually assaulting his girlfriend of several years. There were some disturbing clips and audio recordings as well of the incident. And Mason Greenwood's contract has been suspended with Manchester United, and Nike has also officially cancelled his contract, terminated his contract. So we will just be discussing how domestic violence and abuse has sort of taken over the world of sport. It has been a part of sport for very long, but now we are seeing more and more incidents. So we're going to just be having a discussion around that. And also we will then go on to talk about how fans idolize sports persons and, well, is there a solution to this and what is the way forward for sport and sports persons here? So I'm going to open it up to my fellow hosts here. And Krishnan, before we get into all of this, you have just a few updates on what has occurred over the last week or so.
Yeah, no, obviously this podcast will be generally a little bit of a lower tone than maybe some of our other podcasts. But on the flip side, some of the good news that we had recently from the sports perspective, India winning the Under-19 World Cup, their 5th title, which is pretty incredible given there have only been 8 World Cups so far. So India winning again. Congratulations to the Under-19 squad for Team India. In retirement news, Del Potro has officially retired from tennis. Of course, the iconic bandana wearing Argentine. He'll obviously be heavily missed from the tennis world. Was obviously never able to compete with the big three, which frankly no one has been able to, but he was always in and around that area. Pretty consistent quarterfinalist to semi-finalist in most Grand Slams. So congratulations to an amazing career to Del Potro. And lastly, NFL's GOAT Tom Brady officially retired. There was a lot of talk for a long while about whether apparently his assistant was looking for a job and everyone rumored that he was going to retire. He officially put out an Instagram post mentioning that he is officially retiring. He can't give 100. He doesn't feel like he can give 100% to the game. Amazing career again. Does not thank the Patriots or Bill Belichick in his thank you Instagram post, which was kind of interesting to see. But again, congratulations to an insane career.
Thank you for that, Krishnan. And now let's open this topic up. We've been talking about it outside of this forum for a long time now, ever since the news was released. So I'll start with you itself, Krishnan. Take us through Mason Greenwood's thing for all of those who don't know the incident.
Yeah, Mazhar, honestly, you enlightened me on the Mason Greenwood situation when it broke about a week ago from when we're recording. For those of you who aren't aware, Mason Greenwood essentially has been alleged to have had a history of domestic violence against his girlfriend, who I think he's known since high school. There were images put out by her on Instagram of her essentially being beaten. She's shown bruises. She's shown images of her kind of bleeding. They are pretty vulgar images. It's really, really unfortunate to ever see anything like that. And the other thing that Mazhar mentioned was also the audio recording. So there is an audio recording where basically a conversation between her and him very, very clearly showing, sexual assault. So it seems very, again, it seems very, very hard in this situation to really understand if there is any way in which you could potentially Mason Greenwood would not be in trouble over here. I mean, they obviously going through the whole litigation processes right now. Obviously, I'm sure his legal team will do what they can, but it is really, really unfortunate. A player at the age of 20 ever doing something to that effect, and unbelievably unfortunate for his girlfriend. Again, like you said, Mazhar, the scary thing about this is these are the instances that have a photograph and that have an audio associated with it. So you have no idea how many times this could have happened without there being audio and without there being images, which is really, really terrifying. And yeah, we'll never understand what it's like to live in that life, but we have to, irrespective of who you are or what life you lead, this will never be acceptable in our society and is not acceptable in our society. So really scary, really terrifying news, and sad to hear it from someone who's so young. He's 19 or he's 20 years old, maybe 19 or 20 years old. So it's crazy to see that kind of aggressiveness, that angry aggressiveness at that age. So really unfortunate to see it, and hope her and her entire family are doing okay with this. Not really much to say. I don't know where it comes from. It's hard to say too much else barring what happened.
Shubham, I'm going to bring you into this now. Of course, we are United fans, you and I. It's not about the club anymore. The first thing that came to my mind when I read and saw those pictures and I heard that audio was Manchester United at that point went out through the window. At that point, I was just like, how can anyone do this, right? At this point in time, it's vile, it's inhumane. Like Krishnan said, a 20-year-old, God knows how long this was going on for. Then you start joining the dots, right? Connecting the dots. The Iceland incident that everyone was cracking jokes about. People were blaming Phil Foden on one side. Yes, Phil Foden did what he did was wrong as well. Absolutely wrong. But was he the reason why Greenwood did that, or was Greenwood himself? It's really like I don't know what to say, and I was really speechless. So I just wanted to bring in your thoughts as well, Shubham.
So I just feel like his girlfriend, obviously what she's experienced is just very sad. And I'm assuming that the video, the voice recording that is there, which is now all over the internet, I'm assuming that she recorded that secretly without Greenwood knowing about it. The fact that she had to do something like this just goes to show that, imagine the mental torture that she was going through. Forget the physical torture that we saw the bruises, we saw her lip cut and all the blood and all of that we saw. But imagine mentally what she was going through, that then she had to finally do this, like secretly record it and then put it out there. So it's not just about obviously the physical pain that this girl has gone through. Mentally also, it must be such a difficult moment for her. And let's keep in mind, the good thing is that after all of this came out, largely there's been huge support for her. Largely everyone understands that what Greenwood has done is extremely wrong. There is quick action being taken against him. But still, I read some comments against her. And I just feel like in a situation like this, if people can have negative comments, it just doesn't make sense. And talking specifically about Greenwood, last I read was that he was released on bail. Now, I do not know the exact legal charges against him, what's happening in court and stuff like that. But clearly, whatever we've seen, This guy, I think, could potentially be looking at 10, 11 years in jail if he's convicted. And that is obviously the end of his career. But as a matter of fact, this is right now, I don't give two shits about his career. A player like this, if he's at fault, honestly, as a football fan, as a Manchester United fan, I don't want him in my club. I don't want him in the sport. And he really, if all of this comes out and if he's proven guilty, he definitely needs to be given a strict punishment, because things like this need to stop. Probably we'll discuss this later on, but like, just to sum up my thoughts briefly, he's a 20-year-old guy with great potential, has broken into the United squad in the last 2 seasons. Obviously, a lot of academy graduates, a lot of young kids look up to him. And when they see stuff like this, that can also have a major impact. So I think the Premier League, the FA, and largely speaking, the police need to set him as an example and take strong actions and not let things like this just go under the carpet. No matter the money, no matter the media attention or the pull, things like this need to be taken very seriously. And definitely for his girlfriend or his ex-girlfriend, like, she should be protected. She should be given correct consultation, because I imagine coming out of this is not going to be easy. So yeah, in a situation like this, a lot of times the victim is just forgotten, and there'll be so much media glare on Greenwood and a lot of stories about him. But this girl's mental state needs to be protected and being taken good care of.
I'll go to Gui now. So Gui, we've seen this so many times where all of these things, like Shubham said, have been brushed under the carpet, or it's just that people forget, right? A lot of these guys go scot-free. Nothing ever happens. We are slowly seeing action being taken, but I still think, like again Shubham said, these trolls on Twitter and Instagram don't stop. They say such inhumane things. It just makes you wonder how fucked society is, right? So Gui, what's your take on this and other incidents as well in the past, if you would like to bring those up as well?
Unfortunately enough, there's always going to be someone who's hungry enough for attention to type absolute garbage, even in what should be a super sensitive time, right? And that's what people have been doing around past incidents like this also. Like, for example, with the gigs event, right? How many people remember uh, the indictment? It was torrid, like apparently headbutting his ex-girlfriend, throwing her out of the hotel room, throwing her bags, and this is all for just accusing him of probably being involved with someone else. And it's kind of difficult to speak about as well, right? Considering I don't know, like, this is not a situation you witness now and again, but somehow or the other, every 2 to 3 years, you will come across a very famous athlete doing something so absurd in their private lives. Uh, Again, uh, almost unforgivable, irrespective of what is going on. That there are how many ever exceptions you make for their behavior, at the end of the day, how can you explain something of this nature? You can't. And again, I say almost unforgivable only for the reason that you don't know the whole truth, and that is could be decided in X or Y fashion in a trial at the courts. And again, we should all like refrain from commenting in either direction, is with concrete, or rather in an extremely concrete fashion. Giggs was one. Benjamin Mendy is another. Where it's I know, like, we've grown up idolizing footballers, right? Like, if you watched footballers who you basically wanted to be like, I want to run like this one, I want to score like this one, I want to wear the same clothes as this one does, my jersey should hang out like this one, I want to wear socks which are up high, down low, boots. And this is not just about a look, it's about how great you feel their persona is in your life. It's about the impact that they have on you, because you're watching, well, probably the top, I don't even know how to put it, like, what is the percentile they are in, players in the Premier League or the NBA or in F1. These guys are the top of the top of the top. There is no, you can't get better, right? And if anyone enjoys sports, that's where you want to be. and that's how you but naturally you want to imbibe what they are like. And again, like we say this about sports, but it could be true about I mean any other profession, right? Look at uh, okay, I again look at the most popular portrayals or representations of bankers, lawyers, all the shows we watch, right? It's not like the most rosy portrayal. You are again saying that these people are not nice. These people are generally arrogant, have attitude problems, or think so highly of themselves that they don't know or they can't judge the consequences of their actions. And it kind of seems to be coming back to that one sentence. They don't see that their actions have X consequences which would apply to, someone who's not in their position, that is at the top of the pyramid. And largely, I believe athletes are much more in focus than, someone doing this in any other profession. But also, yes, when they do good things, they are also much more highlighted when than when regulars do it, right? So it's it's very odd. Like you don't really know how to react to this situation, and I don't think it's unfortunate that this gentleman is young, old. I mean, how many excuses can you make for that, right? It's would it have been better if he were 15 years older than he is? Answer is no. Would it have been better if gigs were again 15 years older, or anyone for that matter? I'm not, these are the names which I have in my mind. I don't mean to use them as references for poor behavior or poor life choices and just general disdain. But yes, again, it's very difficult to summarize my thoughts on this. As you can tell, I've rambled on for far too long on this. But what is the excuse? They're all just basically not playing out what they have as a privilege, but they're playing it out as something they deserve.
And I think just one thing, Gui, to the point that you make, sometimes there is this, I think we're all guilty of this, right? We're all sports fans and we're all passionate. So we all have a tendency to have very strong opinions on players and on athletes. And we oftentimes voice it, right? Usually maybe just be at our TV screen, maybe it's calling our friends and voicing it. We all are very, very passionate about the people that we follow. And there's just a little bit of an understanding of that doesn't give us an entitlement to really say anything to them directly, either whether it's using social media, whether it's in person. Even though we are fans of the club and maybe they're earning a lot of money, it doesn't entitle us to behave anyway. So any way that you comment to, that you speak to maybe Mason Greenwood's girlfriend or however it is, just because you're a fan of them or their organization, it doesn't really give you an entitlement to speak to them directly in a way that's offensive. And again, I'm not, pointing fingers. I know we're all guilty of this, right? I know I've said extremely mean things to players, but there is sort of a line that you have to draw where I understand that there are people who earn a lot and there's argument constantly made of, there are bigger problems in the world. Like this is all they have to face. That may be the case, but there is always a way in which we can be better. And I think everyone can just work to be slightly better and not targeting athletes, definitely athletes' families, in this way that is really, really detrimental. And you have to understand, especially families of athletes didn't make this decision. When you target it towards their family or towards their kids or towards their parents, whoever it is, there's not much of a choice that they made in even maybe making this a reality. So just being slightly conscious of how you target, and especially in this case, right, where it's extremely sensitive. And I know the argument that some people will make is that, it's alleged, like nothing's proven. How dare she say something like this? It's not proven. You're just putting it out there. There might be a very, 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 very small, there may be a very, very small minority of cases where that is true, where there is someone completely misusing an opportunity to do it. But I think the majority of the cases are people who have actually gone through some sort of trauma trying to voice it. And I think there's a way to be just conscientious of both sides at times. Maybe you don't have to insult either party. If you maybe believe that, still some litigation has to happen to understand what really happened, you can be respectful to both parties. I don't think there's this attitude of you have to insult one party. If you just be cautious and careful and just generally respectful, especially when directly addressing people in person on social media, because again, it affects people. I'm sure it affects those people. I obviously will never know what it's like to be like them, but I'm sure it affects them in some or the other, especially in a case like this, which is so emotional and violent. It will have an effect. So just being, and I think it's something that everyone can work on potentially.
So, okay, so we've actually been going a bit heavy on this, and it has, I mean, mentally, it's taking a toll on me also right now, to be honest, because it's a dark day to have in general, right? Because in sports, you feel like one with your team, your players, your team's players, the team you support, that is, and all of that. So it feels like a part of you is taken away when all of this comes out as well. It's because it becomes your big family. So I completely agree with what you said, Krishnan. We are all guilty of doing it. But that is how human emotions work. That is how the mind works. No one is perfect. No one's a saint. So, anyway, but Shubham, I wanted to bring you in now. Let's talk about remedial issues, or where does this problem stem from, right? Like, where, what is to be done? How do things change potentially? Or before that, even, why is this coming up so much? Like, why do you think personally is this such a common occurrence across male sports?
So the way I look at it is basically when there's so much money and when there's so much media attention, you perhaps get to a stage where you start feeling like you're the ultimate. When you have like millions of followers, when every action of yours is adored by a lot of people, every time you score a goal, you're on the back pages of newspapers, God knows across how many countries. You become global sensations at a very young age, and you have a lot of money in your bank account. You have the most expensive clothes, expensive cars, amazing houses. And if these people are not educated well enough, I think that's where the problem starts, because it's all in the head, right? Like, again, I don't want to take names of, we have already discussed Greenwood, but imagine like if we were 17, 18, 19, thrust in the limelight, were at the top of our game, making a lot of money, there's a huge chance that we can go like astray. There's a huge chance that we can screw up our lives. But at that point in time, you perhaps need your parents or you need counselors. Now, I don't like, see, India has a very different culture. We largely spend a lot of time at home. We have our parents who are always like sort of guiding us through. Abroad, it's different. People at the age of 18 and stuff like that, they move out and they start living individually. So largely, I think the problem stems from money and the sort of fame that they get. And I also think it's perhaps a lack of education. Like, the FA is trying so hard to kick racism out of the sport. And Anthony Elanga, he misses a penalty, and he's like, what? Again, I think he's a teenager, gets absolutely brutally racially abused. So I just think education has to be brought into the system. And when I talk about education, I mean all these academy players who potentially could start playing for the first team in any sport. I'm sure every sport must be having a grassroots system. So all these people who are progressing to the grassroots levels, they have to be given education about what sort of fame you can expect if you make it in the sport, how to handle social media, with the positive and negative aspect. Like, if you're blowing up, your head should not blow up, and if you're going through a very dark phase, you need to maintain your sanity, handle all of that. I think they need to also be, maybe the club should take responsibility, or the agents should take more responsibility about financial managers, about how to handle your money. Because I read a very interesting thing. I forget who said it, but I think it was Shaq who said it in the NBA, that initially he got his $1 million and he started blowing up, and a bank manager called him and told him that most NBA players retire and they're broke. So that sort of education needs to be given to these young kids. And also about see, one thing is that they become cultural figures, right? They become icons in the society, and there's no harm in idolizing someone, because we've all idolized, and that happens normally. It's a human emotion that you really like start liking someone. But perhaps education about how to conduct yourself socially, about the things that you say, what can happen. Now, maybe they don't want to do that, but listen, sorry, guys, you're being paid top bucks. There's so many people viewing you all. Every action of yours can have a major impact. So I think education is the main form of any reform that can happen. Education is the best way. And with education, harsh and strong punishments and fair punishments. Like, it's not like one superstar gets away with it because he's a much bigger figure than the other one. Everyone treated equally. If XYZ player fucks up and they've done the same thing, doesn't matter your stature, your money, your personality, your whatever, all of you all get the same punishment. So yeah, I think now those are ideas from the top of my head. I think hopefully that would help.
100% Shubham, but sadly, we don't live in a rational world. And that's the problem. Everyone has their ulterior motives. Everyone wants. I just, every episode, the money has to come up, it seems. That is definitely like the be all tell all sort of thing in this case. But I
Because
like
you
what
spoke
you.
on money, I'll just say one thing before you move on with the topic. I was seeing something about what is his name, Jordan Belfort, the Wolf Street guy, yeah, Wolf of Wall Street. So I was seeing one of his shots on YouTube, and I think it's him only. I might maybe I'm getting it wrong, but I think it's him. He said money can just magnify whatever you are. So if you are an asshole, money will make you a bigger asshole. And if you're a good person, money will perhaps help you become a better person. So the thing is, when you're trusted with a lot of money, and if you are a jerk by nature, you are an asshole by nature, perhaps because you have that money, you feel like you have all the power and you will just become a bigger asshole. So yeah, I think maybe with some people, they have an attitude problem. Their ego is not checked. And when money is thrown into the picture, then they are like, listen, man, I have it all in life. Fuck you types.
That actually ties in well and bodes well with what you said. I like what you said at the beginning, though, about education, right? I think cricket has done that. Cricket is doing that, but also cricket can do it because it's a smaller scale in terms of the structure it has for the grassroots. England itself has like, I think, like 9 tiers in the main pyramid structure. So it's very hard to do that. And also the clubs don't have as much money. The boards are so rich in cricket anyway. We know BCCI as well. After the entire Hardik Pandya incident in Coffee with Karan, we saw proactive steps being taken by BCCI where they've now started grooming the under 19s. So they teach them how to speak, what to say, the portrayal in media. There's a check on in terms of there's no curfew implemented. There was an interesting interview of Steve Waugh where he mentioned that there was a curfew implemented for his Australian team and performances suffered. So then he removed it. You should check that out. It was I don't remember who it was with. I think it was with Michael Atherton, if I'm not wrong, but definitely do check that out. If I find it, I'll share it on our podcast link. So viewers, you can check that out as well. But where they mentioned about this curfew and all of that. So even India's decided, let's not keep curfews. They're kids, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, but they are keeping a check in terms of what they are doing. Underage drinking is a big no. Fitness is also so important. You do anything wrong, you're out, because there are people who are more than good enough to replace a person and even probably become better. So I think that check is happening in cricket, not only in India. I've read about it being implemented in Australia, England as well now. South Africa is doing it. So, but at that massive scale, do you, Gui, I'm coming to you with this. Do you think something like this is actually possible in a sport like football? Basketball may still be possible. Again, it's a franchise game. I'm talking about the NBA and FIBA purely, maybe the EuroLeague and stuff like that. It's possible. But a game like football, do you see it? Do you think it's possible at all?
I don't know. Just thinking of the top of my head, right? Cricket, tennis, even kind of like cricket is what it's called, the gentleman sport, right? Isn't it? Tennis has been played by the rich and famous as is, was, and it's you just know it's like kind of expensive to play to begin with. Also, neither of these are like contact sports. Like, again, I don't want to put football and basketball, I don't want to term them as, you know, contact sports, but yes, there is a lot of aggression involved, right? By nature, some sports are just slightly more mellow as compared to the others, so where you can you can dictate, so to speak, that this is how you need to conduct yourself to begin with when you're playing the sport, which kind of works with cricket and tennis, right? And now you go to football and the NBA. where you have to be physically dominant. You have to dominate physically as well. Okay, not just physically but mentally also. But very big aspect is uh, you imposing your authority on the other person. Uh, so I just think like trying to impose things like curfews, a higher set of regulations than there already is. All right, let's be honest. There are already a lot of regulations in place. Just without adding on to any of the suggestions here, uh, but yeah, it's kind of like, what is the nature of the athletes who play these sports? What has been required of them to play these sports at the top level, and does that sit in line with uh, the regulations you're trying to like suggest, in the sense that curb XYZ kind of behaviors, do not do it. But will they fall in line with that? First question, first of all, that seems to be a very big question mark. The NBA bubble had enough breaches, right? It's also not possible to have regulation at such a level. Okay, you can have regulation at such a level, but how do you monitor and control? And what and how often will you kick out a top player, right? These guys draw the money. Are you going to kick out players because of non-compliance with the regulations? Not super likely, right?
But
So
I tell you what, I think that is something that they should do. Once you said 1, 2 examples, no, everyone falls in line. Once you pick on the biggest bully, everyone falls in line. Once you pick on the person who has the biggest clout, and they are brought to justice, the other people, they will at least think twice before screwing around. I'm not saying there won't be screw ups will always happen, but at least there'll be a little bit of, if not fear, but respect for the rules. I think that's
which in
important.
itself will reduce the number of such incidents, right? That's fair point. Like, which is, I was hoping someone butts in, because I was just thinking at the top of my head as to, because regulations and how people would react to them, super subjective, right? Like, I don't know how we would react to certain regulations. Some I don't know what your take is on the natural aggression required to play certain sports, and the mellow aspect of, say, cricket or tennis.
Just before Krishna, and before you speak, I was anyway going to come to you. I just wanted to highlight that yes, I agree with the contact sports part. Football and basketball are very much contact sports. They're officially contact sports. So let's leave that aside. But combat sports, we have seen enough and more incidents, but that's also, there's a lot of things around dementia and concussions in that. I'm not saying fair enough, but it happens. That is still, like, there's some logic or at least explanations behind that. Not acceptable by any means. Not acceptable by any means. I don't think players are protected enough, especially in the UFC as well. They're not even paid enough by any means. And that's why they are all moving to boxing, like Francis and Ganu. So Krishna, just to summarize, and then we can call this episode off.
Yeah, Maz, I think you hit on a good point of, teaching players how to use social media, teaching players how to deal with the massive following they're going to get from that step they take up in life. The one thing I will say is there's an extent to how much you can control their lives, right? You can't have 24/7 cameras everywhere they go, and we don't want that. We don't want the BCCI 100% of the time seeing what these players are doing. They have the right to some amount of personal space. The sad truth with that is, despite living in a world with social media and a lot of ways by which things become public, the sad truth, especially in cases like this that involve any kind of, especially in cases that involve, sexual, any domestic violence or sexual abuse, a lot of times it's behind closed doors. So the likelihood of you getting, it's not something that's happening in a stadium, it's not something that's happening in public. You very likely will not hear too much about it, find out a lot about it, unless, something's recorded. So it will continue to be an issue. And I don't necessarily know if there's a clear solution to making those things public, right? Because we can't, no authority should continually be following these players. But I think, to your point and to what everyone said so far, the thing that we can do as a society is not elevate them to this level, right? I think Mark Goldwich said the same thing when it came to Mason Greenwood, right? Don't treat they're athletes, and we can be fans, we can love the way they play, we can love everything they do. Don't datify them. No one is a god. No one is entitled to some higher, they're not entitled to anything extra than anyone else because of what they do. And listen, well, again, this is all something we do. If Mahendra Singh Dhoni walked through the door right now, I would likely cry. But I think we're all guilty of this, and we kind of all have to work a little bit to have a lot of respect for them, a lot of love for them, but don't exalt them to this massive level where they might feel like they are entitled to pretty much everything, like they are an individual who's entitled to more than anyone else. One of my favorite quotes from Charles Barkley, I know we've quoted a lot of NBA players, is there are only 5 jobs that are real jobs: a teacher, fireman, policeman, doctor, and someone in the armed services. Now, I know I'm not going to get into I know there could be others that are really important, but his basic point was there are few jobs that are super game changing in terms of how the world functions and you can't survive without. Everyone else, just take it a little bit easy. Don't take yourself too seriously. I know we all care about what we do, but don't take yourself that seriously. And the same thing goes for sport, right? Malu talked about the racial abuse towards players who miss penalties. Just take it easy. We all love sport. It's an amazing industry. But in the context of the world, let's enjoy it for what it is, but not exalt people to this unnecessary level. And don't harass them either when they mess up and treat it like, they deserve some kind of abuse because of how they performed on a field. We just, to some extent, there's an opportunity to put things in context of here.
So on that note, thank you for that, Krishnan. I think you pretty much summarized exactly what we wanted to pretty much cover in this episode. Thanks, Shubham. Thanks, Gui. This was episode 25 of season 2 of All About Sports, the podcast. We've been going for, I don't know how many weeks now continuously, but we're getting to 100 for sure. So it's been amazing and great talking to you as always, guys. And for all the viewers who tuned in, thank you so much. We'll be back with new episodes soon. If you have any sort of opinions or takes on or suggestions for what you may think about is the best way to deal with such scenarios and such difficult sort of situations in the sporting world, what do you think about idolization of sports persons, so on and so forth? Do share your thoughts. We're happy to hear it, or do get in touch with any of us. Everything is available. All our platforms are open, and we're happy to have a discussion around that. Check out our website. The links are all there. Check out. You can also listen to our podcast on any audio platform that you may have, any podcast platform. Just look for All About Sports - the podcast, and you'll find it there. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Till then, take care, stay safe, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
If you like this episode, make sure to leave a like and share it with anyone else who might be interested. You can also subscribe on any social media platform that you prefer, and all our links are in the bio. We also have a website with all our episodes as well as blogs and a whole lot of other sports content, so make sure to check that out as well.